Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Engadget stage live here at CES 2019. My name is James True. I am managing editor here, and our very, very first guest, privileged to have you with us, is Bharat Vassan, CEO of PAX Labs. So we're going to be talking about cannabis's digital revolution, or at least that's what I'm calling it. Do you feel like that's overplaying it, or do you think that's a real thing that's happening right now?
No, I think it's a real thing. As legalization spreads, you've got millions of people coming in, and PAX is a company that's focusing on taking the guesswork out of getting high, or cannabis, I should say. But one of the biggest problems in the space is people coming is figuring out what's the right thing for you.
Right.
They're funny names like, lemon haze and cherry fizz, and what's the right thing for folks? And PAX is all about taking that guesswork out of it. So PAX has a long history in the space. We've focused mostly on vaporizers and making this a really great experience, a really simple experience. We started with the PAX 3, which is over there, and that's for loose leaf and flower. And the original experience of cannabis is you've got to grind it up, you've got to roll it, you've got to put it in. We created the PAX original vaporizer for flower that made that a whole lot easier. I think PAX Era, which has been out for a couple of years, makes that even simpler. So it's just about concentrates and oils. You can pop a pod in, you can take a puff, it works really great. It's a smooth draw, you can control it, you can make it predictable. I think that's a big innovation that makes it more mainstream.
But what are the actual origins of the company? Because didn't it used to be Plume?
It was Plume, and two founders, Adam and James, did a great job of building up the company. At some point, they had to decide to split the companies. One became Juul, the other one became PAX. PAX is mostly focused on the cannabis side of things. We work with over 50 brand partners around the country on the Era side of things. The flower side of the business is international as well, so very, very well-known consumer technology brand. The PAX 3 is for folks that love flower. And what you do is you grind up flour, you put it in, it heats it up. You've got very, very fine grain temperature control, so it doesn't have that burnt taste that you get after. And it's very sleek, as you can see. It looks like Apple would have made it. And we hope if Apple made vaporizers, they'd make something like this. So that's what PAX 3 is for. PAX Era is really more for that portable, on-the-go type of feel that people take a quick puff whenever they feel like it. We've always focused on high-quality product, making transparent, like how we make the product, how clean it is, how safe it is. But the biggest issue for this space is just predictability. How do people know what they're getting? How do we make that experience more predictable for folks? And so with an Era, you know what pod you're putting in. There's very, very fine grain temperature control, so the oil doesn't taste burned. You can get exactly the right feel if you're an experienced user. There's also session control or dose control, which allows you to control how much you consume so you can get the exact right feel. One of the biggest problems is, if you take wine, for example, or any alcohol, you can see glasses in front of you. If you had one glass or two glasses or five and you've gone too far.
Right.
One of the hard things about cannabis is you just don't know how much you're consuming, right? And so this is a good example of where we have an app, it controls the device, you can set it to, say, a micro puff, right? And you take puffs and it's going to lock you out so you can feel the effects before you take another puff.
You guys don't actually manufacture or sell cannabis in any way, shape, or form, do you? You guys just make the technology?
That's right. We don't touch the plant. It's a little like Keurig. It's a little like Nespresso. If you think about it, we've got a vaporizer. We focus on how do we make cannabis a really predictable, good experience for folks. And we've got brand partners, who are kind of like the Green Mountain Coffees or Starbucks of their day, that are out in each of the states, and they make very unique blends. You've got really high-end pods. You've got pods that are more value and mainstream, kind of like a BevMo, right? And we supply empty pods. People go out there, they leverage their craft and either make these super high-end, solventless distillate pods like the Blue Rivers of the world. Yep. And you've got other folks that are more like the Bud Lights of the world. And that selection's available at dispensaries, licensed dispensaries around the country. Supply empty pods, they extract the cannabis, they fill them, they get them out to stores. People are still figuring out, hey, how do I make a really good experience? It's not just about the most amount of THC. It's about it has this type of feeling, it creates this type of effect. And there's a medical reason. Everyone has a nervous system, they have an endocannabinoid system. The cannabinoids in cannabis interact with that system and create different effects. That's how the science works. But people haven't figured out what types of cannabinoids create what types of effects. And I think that's one of the things as you think about what are the next 5, 10 years going to be about. It's people sorting out like, hey, I want something that helps me sleep a little, relax a little, be more creative. What's the right blend for me is something that's unsolved. Flower gives you that full spectrum experience where you get all of the terpenes, all of the cannabinoids, and you get a full flavor experience. I think with concentrates in the pot, it's more tunable.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's something like, hey, I need something that helps me relax. And it's a very specific effect that you can do. And that's harder to do with flower because you get the full effect. So I'd say it's a little different. We've got over 300 different blends on the platform. So if you are staring at 300 different beers and you're trying to figure out which ones to choose, you're trying to find mental models for how do I express the thing that I want. And I think for PAX and for the industry as a whole, we've got to figure out how to simplify that for folks. So there's this progressiveness to how you get into the experience, so you don't have to start out feeling intimidated about, oh, I've got to know a ton about cannabis before I even take my first step into it, which is kind of what this space feels like a little bit to a lot of folks.
Fair enough. And for the growers and the manufacturers themselves, what's their incentive to be on the PAX platform, do you think? Let's talk about legalization, or legality more generally. So, increasingly legal in America,
Yeah.
But still not everywhere. What challenges is that throwing up for you day to day?
I think it creates this messiness of people not figuring out, like, is this legal, is it not, right? Like, it has this overhang of people thinking, is this okay for me to do? And I think, I think a lot about it, like, normalizing cannabis for not just, myself, folks who work at the company, our fans, but also our families, friends, kids. I think it not being federally legal has that effect. At the state level, you look at states like Colorado and California, and it's just become pretty much a normal thing. It hasn't resulted in craziness. People aren't like out there doing crazy stuff, but it's helped normalize the space a whole lot more. I think Canada's going to push that boundary where it's legal at the federal level in Canada. So when oil becomes legal there this fall in September, I think you're going to see a whole country with a federally legal market that's out there. I mean, having said that, in 2019, we feel more states will go legal, especially on the eastern seaboard.
Yep.
And those will be big states that will push the needle further and further.
Which are the states most likely on the East Coast, do we think?
I think Schumer said, like, New York, they want to do something. I think in Jersey, they don't even need to be on the ballot box. It's legal in, either the medical level or at the recreational level in 33 states today out of 50, which is a pretty big number.
Where is PAX internationally?
So I think the PAX, the flower product, is all over Europe and Canada, so that is very international. I think oil, again, is the fastest growing segment of the market. It's the thing that takes cannabis and makes it portable. Right? It's not it makes it so you can take a puff anywhere you go. You don't have to grind up flower, go through the whole ritual. I think it will be the thing that normalizes it. And I think that will take a few more years. I feel like the US is going to lead the way on this one, along with Canada. The Canadians also leading is a good thing. But I think the US, and it also points to, I think, like, for Europe, there's a lot more concern around, I think, around privacy, around, like, health and safety standards, which I think is relevant to the US as well, but it's one big reason why we think that the FDA should deschedule cannabis, and it should be more like alcohol, so we can do more research around who is it right for, who is it not. It's clearly for adult use, but it's hard to test product that's federally banned.
I wanted to switch back talking more about the usage process of it.
Yeah.
So, because we've got medicinal and recreational as well, so we've got to remember those two things. Do you feel like I know it's very dangerous to say something's healthier, but could that be an incentive for someone to switch from smoking flower to vaporizing oil?
Yeah, so one of the things you get when you roll a joint, right, is you're burning something at something like 3,000 degrees, and then you're inhaling it, so you get all of the soot and the tar and everything else that comes back through it. You get a full flavor profile, but that's one of the things you're doing. I think vaping, heating it up at a much lower temperature makes it certainly, I think, more safe. We'd love to be able to do more research on this, qualify it better, but from all of the data we've seen, it is a lot safer than even, for example, using a bong. Right, where you would think going through water makes it a much safer process, but there is more particulate matter in bongs as well as smoking a joint. So we do think vaping is a much safer way to go with PAX vaporizers.
And you already mentioned that you're somewhat more in control of not so much the strength, although you can choose to buy one of the appropriate strength, but also the dosage and the heat and the flavor as well. What is your prediction? What's going to be the next technical revolution in cannabis use, whether that's PAX or a broader thing?
I think the big thing is going to be around those three themes: quality, transparency, predictability. But I think predictability is going to be the big one as millions of people come into the space and there's more and more different blends. People are going to be trying to make sense out of what's right for me, and I think that's equal parts software and hardware, and I think companies like PAX are going to lead the way on that.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for joining us here on stage. It's been a pleasure. Thanks everyone at home for watching. Stay tuned for more live from the CES stage 2019 with Engadget.
Hi, Mom.